Paul Blobel was one of the men who played a central role in some of the most horrific atrocities carried out by Nazi Germany during the Second World War. Born in 1894 in Potsdam, Germany, he grew up in an ordinary middle-class family and trained as an architect before the First World War. When the war broke out, he joined the German army and served on the Western Front, where he was wounded and decorated for bravery. After the war ended, Germany was thrown into economic turmoil, and like many veterans, Blobel struggled to find stable work. His frustrations and nationalist beliefs deepened in the 1920s, and when the Nazi Party began to rise, he found in it a movement that promised order, strength, and revenge for Germany's losses. In 1931, Blobel joined the Nazi Party and soon afterward became a member of the SS, the elite paramilitary organization that enforced Nazi ideology. His career shifted quickly from civilian life to one of violence and authority. When the war began in 1939, he was placed in the ranks of the security forces that followed the German army into occupied territories. These units, known as Einsatzgruppen, were tasked with identifying and eliminating groups the Nazis saw as enemies, chiefly Jews, communists, and other political opponents. Blobel was assigned to lead Sonderkommando 4A, a subunit of Einsatzgruppe A-C, which operated in Ukraine. His name would become forever associated with one of the darkest massacres of the Holocaust, the mass shootings at Babi Yar, a ravine near Kyiv. After German forces captured the city in September 1941, orders were given to clear Kyiv of its Jewish population. Over 2 days, September 29th and 30th, 1941, Blobel's unit, assisted by local police and army units, executed more than 33,000 Jewish men, women, and children. Victims were ordered to remove their clothing, hand over valuables, and then were led to the edge of the ravine, where they were shot in groups. Blobel oversaw the operation personally, ensuring that it was carried out efficiently. The killing was done with chilling organization and speed, making it one of the largest single massacres of the Holocaust. In the months that followed, Blobel's unit continued to carry out similar operations in other parts of Ukraine, Belarus, and southern Russia. Entire villages were wiped out. The killings were not random acts of cruelty but systematic executions, intended to remove anyone the Nazi regime considered racially or politically undesirable. Blobel showed complete loyalty to his superiors and rarely questioned the orders given to him. Witnesses after the war would describe him as cold and meticulous, a man who treated mass murder as an administrative task to be completed efficiently. By 1942, his work in the field had taken a toll on him physically and mentally. He began drinking heavily and was eventually relieved of his command and transferred to other duties within the SS. But even away from the front lines, his role in the machinery of genocide did not end. In 1942, he was put in charge of a secret operation known as Aktion 1005. This program had a single purpose: to destroy the evidence of the mass killings carried out by the Einsatzgruppen and other units. The Nazi leadership feared that as Germany's military situation worsened, the Allies might discover the mass graves and use them as proof of the regime's crimes. Blobel's assignment was to organize teams to exhume the bodies, burn them, and scatter the ashes to eliminate any trace of the murders. Under his direction, Jewish prisoners and Soviet POWs were forced to dig up tens of thousands of corpses from mass graves in places such as Babi Yar, Sobibor, Treblinka, and other execution sites. These prisoners were then made to burn the bodies on massive pyres built from railway tracks and wooden logs. When the work was done, the prisoners themselves were usually killed to maintain secrecy. Blobel supervised this gruesome task for nearly 2 years, constantly moving between occupied territories to oversee the destruction of evidence. His methods were methodical, and his reports to superiors were written in bureaucratic language that concealed the horror of what was actually happening. As the war drew to a close and Germany's defeat became inevitable, Blobel was moved to administrative positions in the SS. He was captured by Allied forces in 1945 and became one of the many high-ranking officers charged with war crimes after the fall of the Third Reich. At first, he denied responsibility for the massacres, claiming that he had only been following orders and that the killings were part of wartime necessity. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Documents, eyewitness accounts, and testimony from his own subordinates established his direct role in both the executions and the cover-up operations. Blobel was tried in the Einsatzgruppen trial at Nuremberg in 1947 to 1948, one of the 12 subsequent trials following the main Nuremberg proceedings. He faced charges of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and membership in a criminal organization. During the trial, the prosecutors presented the full scope of his actions, including his leadership at Babi Yar and his management of Action 1005. Blobel attempted to justify his actions by arguing that he had been a soldier obeying military orders, a defense used by many others who stood trial, but the judges rejected this argument, declaring that moral responsibility could not be excused by obedience to unlawful commands. The court found him guilty on all counts. In its judgment, the tribunal described him as one of the key figures in the Nazi program of extermination, responsible not only for mass murder, but for trying to erase the evidence of those crimes. He was sentenced to death. Blobel remained unrepentant, expressing no real remorse for his actions. He was executed by hanging at Landsberg prison in 1951. Paul Blobel's life and career stand as a stark example of how ordinary men could become instruments of enormous evil when placed within a system built on ideology, obedience, and dehumanization. He began as a trained architect, someone whose skills were meant to build, yet he became a man who destroyed on an unimaginable scale. His participation in the Holocaust was not an act of blind rage, but one of deliberate, organized murder, planned, documented, and carried out under his direction. In the years since the war, historians and survivors have returned again and again to the events at Babi Yar as a symbol of the Holocaust by bullets, the phase of the genocide carried out not in camps but in open fields, ravines, and forests across Eastern Europe. Blobel's command represented the early brutal phase of the Nazi extermination campaign, when hundreds of thousands of people were killed by gunfire, before the gas chambers of the death camps came into full operation. The work he later did to hide those crimes revealed the regime's awareness of its own guilt and its attempt to erase history. The story of Blobel is not only about one man's cruelty, but also about how bureaucratic systems can transform human beings into functionaries of destruction. He was not a sadistic loner acting on his own, but a disciplined officer within a structured hierarchy that rewarded obedience and punished conscience. Those who served under him described how orders flowed downward and were executed without hesitation, how moral boundaries dissolved in the face of routine, and how killing became part of daily duty. Today, the ravine at Babi Yar stands as a memorial site where the victims of Blobel's actions are remembered. The place that once echoed with gunfire and screams is now a quiet ground of remembrance, symbolizing both the depths of human cruelty and the enduring call to remember those who perished. Paul Blobel's name is remembered not for valor or service, but as a warning of what happens when ideology replaces humanity and obedience becomes more important than conscience. His life, from architect to executioner, remains one of the most chilling transformations of the Nazi era, and his execution marked not just the punishment of a man, but a small measure of justice for the countless lives he helped destroy. Thanks for watching. If you have a thought regarding Paul Blobel, drop it in a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe.